Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Truth. I'm your host, the one you love the most, Niall Hessen, back with a brand new episode here in The Truth. Back once again with my boy AJ Ponciano. AJ, how are you doing on this fine Tuesday evening?
I'm doing great. We're 2 days away from the first game, Chiefs Ravens kicking it off. We're going to have 4 straight days of NFL football with some college football mixed in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is like an ideal time to be alive, especially if you're a football fan. Obviously, college football started last week. Well, technically, week zero was the week before, but I mean, week one is when the college football season starts, in my opinion. So that was last week. We had games on Sunday, we had a game on a Monday. Now we get NFL football on Thursday, Friday, college football Saturday, and NFL football again Sunday and Monday. So yeah, I mean, that's 4 or 5 straight days of football. If you're a football fan, that's absolutely exciting. It's hard to believe that the opening day of the NFL is, at the time of recording this, less than 2 days away. So it's crazy that the football season's here, and it always seems like this. It seems like from the Super Bowl to the start of the next season, it always takes so long. And then once the NFL season starts, it goes by so quick. It just, at least for me, that's kind of how it feels like. But it's my favorite thing to watch, and the Vikings are starting 0-0. So, before they end the season 10-7 or 11-6. So it's always a great standing to be there. But no, in all seriousness, right, we got football coming up here. We recently recorded our Thursday night show, and obviously you guys have seen that. And today we're going to be doing our Friday night show because the NFL is playing on a Friday in Brazil. It is going to be the Packers and the Eagles. So it should be a fun and exciting game. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to give you guys our must starts, sits, sleepers, and busts. Again, we don't really set a number on an individualized game like this, so it may be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, depending on how many for each category. And then at the end, which I was going to do for the Thursday night show, but completely forgot about it and spaced on it, is give you guys, well, each give you guys our game prediction with a potential score, mainly just a prediction. But should be fun, relatively quick episode here to get you guys good to go. And then we'll have our week one start, sit, sleepers, and busts coming out in a couple of days, obviously before the Sunday game. So with that being said, AJ, go ahead and give me any must starts you have in this Packers Eagles matchup.
So I'm going to start with two wide receivers, one from each side. Jaden Reed is the first one. One of the big things about the Eagles last year, they had horrible pass defense. And I know when they went out and got, I believe, Mitchell and DeJean in this past draft, but they're both rookies. They're both coming out in their first year. And one of the big things with the Eagles, their run defense was solid, so they're going to have to mix it up. Jet sweeps, they got to be able to move Jaden Reed around the field, and that's what he excelled in last year. Especially when we keep on quoting him as the next Debo Samuel. They got to be able to move around, and try him in all different types of positions, all different types of lineups. And then Devonta Smith is going to be my next guy. I think Smith's going to have probably his best year this year. I think a lot of people are really locking on Saquon in the backfield, and then that's going to leave a lot of one-on-ones or safety on top. And I think that safety is probably going to be fading towards A.J. Brown there over Devonta Smith. I think Smith's going to have some of the most receptions, maybe most yards, probably most touchdowns. He may lead the team potentially in touchdowns next year through the air, which I wouldn't be too surprised about once they get that goal line set. I don't know. Is this Packers defense also, the DBs have probably been, I'd say, the worst part of that defense as well. Their O line and linebackers have been great the last couple of years. I know Jair Alexander's there, but he's probably just going to follow A.J. Brown throughout a lot of that game. So I couldn't even name you who the cornerback two is for the Packers roster right now. Whoever it is, I still have Devonta Smith beating him.
Yeah, so I have two must starts, and they're both on the Packers side. The first one's going to be Christian Watson. Now, I know a lot of people are hesitant with Christian Watson. I know a lot of people were avoiding Christian Watson in drafts, and I think there is an appropriate reason to do so just because of the track record that Christian Watson's had. But as of now, he is fully healthy, and that is going into week one, so things can change. But if you have Christian Watson, you might as well take advantage of it going into this matchup here. I do believe that the intention of the Green Bay Packers and the intention of Jordan Love is to have Christian Watson as the number one receiver for Green Bay. Even though I think some other guys are going to step up to the mix, guys like Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks, I think ideally Christian Watson is primed to be the Packers' number one receiver. And I think he even is the number one receiver on the depth chart. I know it doesn't necessarily matter, but just things to consider. Anyways, I know the biggest thing with Christian Watson's obviously his health, his hamstring. He went to see a hamstring specialist Who knows what that did for him, but he at least went to go do that this offseason. I'm guessing they fine-tuned something. I'm pretty sure it was like a muscle deficiency in both the hamstrings. And so that's one of the things that over time, if you get it figured out, can actually, be fixed. So I think there's some optimism there. But again, you can't predict injuries, right? For all we know, Christian Watson could play all 17 games to be successful. Do I think that's going to happen? Probably not. But he is healthy to go for week 1. So I think that's definitely a must start, especially for the Packers, who is going to be going up against the Eagles defense that looks a little bit different this year. So I think Christian Watson is for sure a must start, primarily in the wide receiver 2 or flex position. And then secondly, I'm going to go with Josh Jacobs. Again, Josh Jacobs, a guy I think people do typically start, especially in a situation like this. But there's been some skepticism with Josh Jacobs this season, just from him coming over from Las Vegas, also with a kind of crowded Packers running back room in general. You got Marshawn Lloyd, Emmanuel Wilson. I know AJ Dillon's on IR, but still, Marshawn Lloyd and Emmanuel Wilson, guys that could really make an impact for the Packers this season. Matt LaFleur has had high praise on Josh Jacobs, and I think that's going to continue. Also, the Eagles' rush defense isn't as dominant as expected as it was last year. So that does give the Packers the opportunity to run the football. They obviously moved on from their longtime back in Aaron Jones, bringing a guy like Josh Jacobs, which is really going to change the landscape for the Packers. And again, going into this Eagles front that probably isn't going to be as dominant in the rushing defense category as it was in years past, is really going to provide you with a good opportunity to have success. So again, I think both these guys people typically want to start, but there's some more question marks with these guys as a whole. I think all in all, you got to be satisfied and you got to go out and get these guys. And if you already have those guys, make sure you start them in this week 1 matchup. All right, go ahead and give me your sits.
So I have one sit. I have Dallas Goedert as my sit. I know Goddard's been a pretty effective tight end there for a while. And honestly, after he broke his forearm, I honestly had a better season after a broken forearm, and she came back in like 4 weeks or something like that, 3 weeks in a bye. But I love the linebacking crew over there in Green Bay. I love their 2 young linebackers, Quay Walker and rookie this year. They went out and drafted both of our guys, Edgerrin Cooper. They're in the linebacking position. Both great coverage linebackers. They are going to rack up tackles and just kind of keep the tight ends towards that goal line. Plus, I feel like they're going to try to rush Hurts a lot more in this game. So Dallas Goedert's going to have to sit back, either pass protect or at least have to chip, and it's going to hold him off his route a little bit more. One of the other big things is goal line. I think he's probably the 5th option at this point at the goal line. Obviously, Smith, A.J. Brown, Saquon, and Jalen Hurts are probably the first 4 options. Once they get within probably 10, 15 yards, is probably going to be the main targets there. I could see Goddard having one of those days where it's 4 catches, maybe 45 yards, 35 yards around there, but I don't really see him getting into the end zone there. Again, especially with Quay Walker and Edgerrin Cooper, they're going to be flying all over the field, and Dallas Goedert really isn't known to being that deep threat type tight end, that run after the catch tight end like a Travis Kelce.
So for me, I got 3 sits here. 2 of them are on the Eagles, 1 of them are on the Packers, and I'm going to go with Jordan Love. And I know here comes the Jordan Love slander once again. I don't trust a guy that has a successful year because yeah, it's a successful year, but can you replicate that successful year? I don't know. I mean, Jordan Love to start his career didn't look great. I know he wasn't a full-time starting quarterback, but he didn't look great when he was Aaron Rodgers' backup. And there was a lot of period of time where people were really questioning if Jordan Love was the future quarterback for the Packers. Obviously, he had a turnaround year last year and really did well. But I think there's going to be a little bit of a hangover effect, especially to start the season, especially to start game 1 here in week 1 against the Eagles. So it's one of those situations where Jordan Love is a talented quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I think, quarterback play in this game is going to be spotty. I think Jordan Love, yes, he is a good rusher to an extent, but he hasn't really utilized that, especially coming out of Utah State, where I thought that was a major attribute to his game. I think if he's able to use the rushing upside a little bit more, obviously his arm talent is going to be enough, but it kind of strikes me as one of those situations where Jordan Love is kind of flirting around the 12, 13, 14 point range. And I just don't think that's going to cut it. Now, it depends on your quarterback situation, how many quarterbacks you have, but I definitely would try to avoid Jordan Love as much as possible. Secondly, I'm going to go with the other quarterback in Jalen Hurts. I'm not a big Jalen Hurts fan this year. I really am not. I really think that his rushing game is going to be a little bit more depleted than years past as you bring in Saquon Barkley, as you lose Jason Kelce for that matter, and the tush push there. Teams are going to start to figure that out. And I think that is a big reason why Jalen Hurts had success in fantasy. Well, actually, I know that's why he had a big success in fantasy, was because of that rushing upside and those rushing touchdowns, primarily on the goal line. And although I think that's still going to be prevalent to an extent, it's not going to be as effective as years past. On top of that, the Packers overall have a pretty good defensive front, which is going to prevent, guys like Jalen Hurts to get into the end zone and sneak it away there. Jalen Hurts' arm talent isn't too spectacular as well. He had a pretty high touchdown to interception ratio. And what I mean by high, closely contested, I think it's like 21 to 15 or something like that. So it's one of those things that you're trusting a lot in Jalen Hurts' arm. Obviously, he's got tremendous rushing upside, but I've seen reports from Sirianni as well as the Eagles that they want to try to monitor Hurts' rushing ability. Although Jalen Hurts obviously is a great rusher, they kind of want to limit that to limit potential injuries or things of that matter. And I think in this matchup, it's going to be a low-scoring game, which is one of the reasons why you look at a guy like Jalen Hurts and say maybe you should avoid, even though you're probably going to be starting him because he's probably the best option you have at quarterback. And then my other sit is going to be Dallas Goedert. Again, pretty simple and self-explanatory. I'm not a big Dallas Goedert fan. I think Dallas Goedert is a low-end tight end too on a lot of fantasy teams. And I think that's going to continue, especially in week one, especially since I don't think Jalen Hurts' passing production is going to be there. If he is going to have passing production, it's going to go to guys like A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, not Dallas Goedert. So those are my three sits that I have. What about any sleepers?
One sleeper is Dontavian Wicks in this game. One of the things I mentioned early on is how bad that Eagles secondary was. And I get it for most of it. They were leading games. A lot of teams had to throw a lot more, so they had a lot more passing yards against them. But again, I believe it's Quinion Mitchell, they went out and drafted, and then Cooper DeJean uh, in their first two rounds, I believe, or two of their first three picks. They went out and got those guys to address that defense, but they're still rookies. Jaden Reed, I think, is going to draw a lot of attention. Christian Watson, as you mentioned, hopefully the hamstrings are they're able to figure that out. Then balance, I believe one of them was like, stronger than the other. That's why he being
Yeah.
injured all the time. And I'm not a big Romeo Dobbs fan either. I've never have been. Wicks is kind of someone not out of nowhere, but kind of out of nowhere for me. You talked about him a lot more, brought him up. I guess the amount of tension is going to go everywhere else. Plus, Josh Jacobs. I think a lot of people still forget Josh Jacobs there. That's going to take away that's a lot of attention there for him. And Wicks could finish with a line of like 6 catches, 55 yards, and a touchdown. Like I don't think he's going to be the big play guy there because it's more of the Christian Watson role. Same with Jaden Reed, that big play, but just kind of that safety blanket in a way. Run some slants, just be right there, and some curl routes, some timing routes. Just kind of try to help Jordan Love get in a groove because, like you said, I also agree. I don't think it's going to be a super high scoring game here. I think both quarterbacks are not going to be in a groove early on. They're just going to have to try to get completions, try to just feel comfortable at some point. I think Wicks could be the kind of a safety blanket.
So I'm going to go for two wide receivers as my sleepers. The first one's going to be Jaden Reed, which I've talked a lot about, so I'm going to only touch on him lightly, as well as you talked about him earlier in the show. I'm really excited to see what Jaden Reed is going to do. I think I've been saying Jaden Reed so much that you can't really classify him as a sleeper, but I still think he's going to kind of sleep through the shadows in this matchup here. People forget, including myself, that he was a rookie last year, second round pick out of Michigan State, had a tremendous successful rookie season. I think that's going to continue. Jordan Love has praised Jaden Reed throughout the preseason, throughout training camp, and everything of that nature. So I think that's going to continue. I really do. I think this is going to be one of the games where he really comes out. It has at least a touchdown, 6-7 receptions, 80 yards type thing. Overall, really good performance. I think a lot of people, for those that drafted Jaden Reed, were not expecting the draft position that he was in and the production that he's going to have this season. And then secondly, I'm going to go with Jahan Dotson. Look, he recently got traded from the Commanders. I forget that he's entering his third year. I feel like he's been in the league a little bit longer out of Penn State, former first-round pick, but this is his third year in the NFL. And again, similarly to Terry McLaurin, he really hasn't had a good quarterback to throw him the football to. Now, I obviously talked about Jalen Hurts' passing production most likely going to be down in a low-scoring contest, but I wouldn't be surprised if a guy like Jahan Dotson does get a good amount of repetitions, does get a good amount of receptions, and has overall success because there's going to be a lot of attention on A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, respectively so. And a guy like Jahan Dotson could be a guy that gets a big breaker for a 40, 50-yard touchdown or consistently gets you 15, 16 fantasy points. He's in a way better situation, which obviously should spike his volume from the get-go. And all in all, I think he's a very talented player. You just weren't really able to see his talent in the Washington Commanders system. So I think Jahan Dotson's one of those guys that, again, as time goes on, you're going to be really excited to see kind of what he's going to be able to do. But I think this could potentially be kind of a calling out game for him as well, and a really kind of seeing what future he could hold for the Philadelphia Eagles as a role wide receiver that could really develop into a wide receiver too on your fantasy teams. Okay, and then any bus.
It's kind of a weird one, but the Eagles defense, even though I said this is a little bit of more of a low scoring game, I still think both teams will be in the 20s. I don't think any team's going to reach the 40 mark. Um, but the thing is, a lot of defenses, at least I know in my league, once you hit like a certain threshold of yards given up, it's like minus points that keeps on going down. It's one of those things that this game, both teams could have like 400 combined yards, which is going to minus the points there. Again, as good as their defense was, and I think a lot of people were drafting their defense this year because of how good it was last year. I won't say early on, but I think they were probably one of the top 5 defenses that are being drafted, top 3 defenses. I don't know. Like you can go out and get someone else and just get a better matchup. If you take our advice, where we just draft kickers and defense at the last 2 rounds, you can kind of just switch around whenever you want. But I don't know. I just don't see this defense really forcing any turnovers either. Jordan Love again had a slow start last year. Really picked it up. I think once Jordan Love gets in a groove, like how we saw, I want to say the last 7 weeks of the year last year. Once he gets into that groove, it could just be week 1 right off the bat. I don't see he's never really turned the ball over. I think he finished that last half with like 4 interceptions, something that just was putting up Aaron Rodgers type numbers, which I know is kind of a cop out comp because Rodgers was there forever, but that's how he was performing, and once he got in that group.
So for me, my bus is going to be Luke Musgrave. I had Luke Musgrave on my dynasty team last year. I understand he was a rookie. I had him in like 2 other regular fantasy leagues, I believe. But overall, Luke Musgrave, I think, is going to be a bust this week. I think the Packers as a whole really do appreciate Tucker Kraft more than Musgrave. I know Tucker Kraft is dealing with a bit of an injury right now, but he should be good to go, I believe. At least he said he expects to play in week 1. Musgrave's production nonetheless. So it's one of those things that's a difficult situation. I think Musgrave's a guy that's definitely very talented, don't get me wrong. But I think the Packers as a whole do really appreciate Tucker Kraft more than they do Luke Musgrave, which is a bit disappointing to say the least. But it's one of those things that as time goes on, maybe Luke Musgrave kind of develops into a tight end 1 role, and he's got the talent to do so. But I think in this matchup, especially if Tucker Kraft is fully healthy, which is the expectation, at least for now, I think Luke Musgrave is a guy that a lot of people should avoid. Thank you guys for listening to another episode here on The Truth. If you guys did enjoy it, make sure you follow The Truth on Twitter at thetruthas1 to stay up to date with the latest information regarding The Truth, including podcast dates, podcast uploads, and other important information you don't want to miss. Make sure you guys also follow The Truth on Instagram and TikTok at the.tt.truth as well. Are you looking to find a drink that offers peak hydration, raises your energy levels, speeds up your recovery, and keeps your mind sharply focused and memory? Look no further than Acid Rainwater. I'm excited to partner with Blendland Sports AZ and Acid Rainwater, which focuses on peak hydration and productivity, while also maintaining the ecosystem-friendly product. Use code HESSON15, that's HESSON15, for 15% off every purchase. Before I sign off, I once again forgot about our game prediction. So, AJ, go ahead and give me your game prediction for this matchup.
Yeah, so I think both teams will be in the 20s. I think it will be 27-24, and I have the Eagles winning, mainly because they're at home. If it was in Green Bay, I get it, it's not snowing.
They're in Brazil.
Oh, shit, it is in Brazil. Okay, well, both. I
But
don't
they are
know.
the home team. They are the home
They are
team.
the home
So,
team. Uh,
Philadelphia fans may travel to Brazil.
yeah, I don't know. Honestly, there's just going to be a lot of green, and you're not going to know who's cheering for who.
Right.
I just go Eagles, I guess. As much as I don't like their defense, I think their offense is much better. I know you're not a Hurts fan, but low-scoring game, 27-24 Eagles, home field advantage or not, they're technically the home team.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm going to go with the Eagles as well. It would not surprise me to say the least if the Packers do win. I'm going to go 17-13 Eagles. I think the Eagles do pull this one out. I think the Eagles are the better team, even though the Eagles defense I definitely think is a bit lacking compared to last season. I think the Packers, again, they had a really good year last year. Maybe I'm just a little bit of a Packers hater just because I'm a Vikings fan, but I think the Packers will start slow and finish strong. So I think the Eagles do win this game here 17-13. As always, I'm your host, the one you love the most, Niall Hassan, joined once again by AJ Ponciano. Take care and good night.